A whistleblower in Ohio now alleging that Minnesota is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Medicaid fraud, and warning that members of the Somali community in her state have been stealing millions of dollars from taxpayers. And this has been going on, they say, for more than a decade. And this just keeps getting worse and worse. Attorney Mahek Cook says she's personally been approached by a number of medical providers who say they've been under extreme pressure to become part of an enormous ongoing Medicaid scam. Now, according to Cook, the scheme involves doctors who approve and then rubber stamp home health care payments to family members of elderly people with fake medical conditions. She goes on to say that those family members are, in actuality, scammers who are exploiting a loophole in Ohio's Medicaid program, which allows them to receive astronomical payments up to nearly 6 figures a year for providing personal care to their elder relatives. Even more reprehensibly, she claims the doctors who authorize those payments then receive kickbacks for their part in the scheme. And we hope you're outraged by this. And if you are, then please drop us a note in the comments section, and sincerely would love to hear your thoughts. Now, the attorney blames the problem on criminals within the Somali community, whom she says are clever enough to have figured out a way to game the system. Says they're exploiting a loophole which allows just about anyone to become an at-home health care provider, that 99% of the scammers have been coached on exactly what to say, and that in reality, most of them don't qualify for any kind of benefit at all. Absolutely reprehensible. She also says the entire Somali community is not to blame, and that the providers who warned her about the scheme are afraid for their lives, claiming they'll be stoned to death if anyone ever finds out what they've done. That's a pretty lofty claim. The lawyer goes on to warn that, in her opinion, the entire system is breaking down because there's simply not nearly enough oversight. Says that after state agencies develop their programs and put them into play, there are basically no further independent assessments at all. Even more frightening, she claims that what's going on right now in Minneapolis is nothing compared to what's happening in Ohio. And she's urging every state in the union to immediately ask for an independent audit of all of their Medicaid programs. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. If you're infuriated by everything that's unfolding down there in Minnesota, then you'll be mortified by all that we've shared with you regarding the fraud that's taken place under the watchful eyes of that state's governor, Tim Walz, and the esteemed Congresswoman, Ilhan Omar. Now, here comes the icing on the triple-layer corruption cake, and it's even got a cream center fraud filling. Minnesota has rightfully been the center of attention for a good chunk of time, but issues of Medicaid fraud appear to be a bit more widespread. Also, if these allegations prove to be accurate, get ready for some deep investigations. And it's the Somali community right now that's being very heavily scrutinized. For our friends and associates in Ohio, it's your tax dollars that are possibly being pilfered, lifted, purloined, if you will. And it's the responsibility of the state to hunker down, dig deep, find out if these allegations are legit, and if they are, put the fix in right now. And by the way, before people start complaining, this is not an ethnic issue. It doesn't matter which segment of the population is committing an alleged crime. All that matters is that we demand full accountability with regard to how our tax dollars are being allocated, to whom, also where, and why. With that, over to that high karate aftershave wearing producer, Big Bad Davey Ross. Now, Davey, this is a developing story. It's beginning to sound like Ohio. They're sort of turning into the new Minnesota with regard to fraud and junk. And where's your head on this one?
Well, Bill, we've been hearing from lots of listeners about alleged fraud taking place in their own backyards. And I think this lawyer's probably right. It's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's already pretty bad. So if you're a resident of Ohio, contact your representative. Get involved. Find out if your hard-earned tax dollars are being doled out inappropriately. That's your money, and you don't want to see it getting wasted on junk.